getting what you wanted meant bending the rules, or even bending a person or two to your will, how far would you actually go? Psychologists have been trying to measure that for years. They have a name for the darker corners of our personality, the Dark Triad. The Dark Triad. It's made up of 3 traits that sound like the lineup of a particularly dramatic reality show. Narcissism, machiavellianism, and psychopathy. The Dark Triad isn't a pop psych buzzword from a self-help TikTok. Versions of the test, which we are about to take, are actually used by law enforcement, psychologists, even major companies. People with high Dark Triad scores statistically more likely to break rules, stir chaos, or exploit others, but here's the plot twist. They're also more likely to rise into leadership positions, command attention, and attract partners with ease. Hey, baby. So, where do you fall on the Dark Triad? Are you sure you want to know? Because we can find out right now. You want to? Here's how we're going to do it. I have 36 statements for you, and they are split into 3 rounds of 12. Each round is focused on one part of the triad, and afterward, you will learn where you land on all 3. So while you can, just lay back and listen. If you want to know what your score is by the end, you need to keep track. On paper, your notes app, in your head. But for each statement that you hear, you're going to need to give yourself 0 points if you disagree, 5 if you're neutral, and 10 if you agree. That is 0 if you disagree, 5 if you're neutral, and 10 if you agree. By the end, you'll know whether you're mostly harmless with a few spicy edges, or the kind of person that Netflix would feature in a charming but dangerous documentary. Either way, welcome to the darker side of the personality. So let's see what's hiding under that hood. Starting with round 1. Round 1, statement 1. And statement 1 is, you think very highly of yourself. You see yourself as the main character. Remember, give yourself 0 if you disagree, 5 if you're neutral, and 10 if you agree. Do you see yourself as the main character? Statement 2. You think mostly about yourself, and you tend to make everything about you. 0 if you disagree, 5 if you're neutral, 10 if you agree. Statement 3. You deserve to have great recognition, acknowledgement, and success. Statement 4. Others should pay special attention to you. Statement 5. You often see your role or your impact as bigger than it may be. Statement 6. You tend to daydream about being widely admired or celebrated. Statement 7. You feel more special or talented than others. Statement 8. You are better in general than others. Statement 9. You are motivated to make friends with famous people. Statement 10. You expect special favors from others. Statement 11. You want others to admire you. Statement 12. You dominate social situations. And that marks the end of round 1. We are now ending round 1 and entering round 2. Round 2, statement 13. And statement 13 is, you mislead people so you can look better in their eyes. Once again, 0 if you disagree, 5 if you're neutral, 10 if you agree. Statement 14. You keep track of sensitive information that can be used to hurt people at a later time. Statement 15. You avoid direct conflict with people who may be useful to you in the future. Statement 16. You enjoy picking on or bullying losers. Statement 17. You can't stand people who can't control their emotions. Statement 18. You do what you want and you do not feel particularly obliged to anyone. Statement 19. You tend to judge people who reveal too much about themselves. Statement 20. You use lies to get your way. Statement 21. You don't place much value on whether your actions are considered moral. Statement 22. You use flattery and compliments as a tool to influence others. Statement 23. Getting ahead in the world is more important than being ethical. Statement 24. Most people are lazy and don't work hard unless they have to. And that marks the end of round 2. We are now ending round 2 and entering round 3. Round 3, statement 25. And statement 25 is, you often lack remorse or guilt, shame, regret for something that you've done. Statement 26. You are not as upset as others when someone dies. Statement 27. Not all people are deserving of basic respect. Statement 28. If you can get away with something illegal, you will. Statement 29. You enjoy taking risks, even when they can get you into trouble. Statement 30. You have been in trouble with the law. Statement 31. You get moods where you act on a whim, thinking little of the consequences or the risk. Statement 32. You have often been called insensitive. Statement 33. You are cynical. Statement 34. You easily lose your temper. Statement 35. you don't have the best relationship with your family. Statement 36. You rarely feel compassion for people who are suffering. And that is the end of round 3. We are now ending round 3. Adding up your total for round 3. And by now, you should have 3 separate totals. 1 for each round, with a maximum of 120 points per round. So let's start with the first round. The first round focused on narcissism. If you scored below 40, congratulations. You're basically immune to main character syndrome. If you're between 40 and 80, you are rocking a healthy level of self-confidence. And if you scored above 80, well, let's just say the world is probably very aware of your presence because you make sure of it. But before you spiral or start pricing out marble statues of yourself, Dark Triad traits are not inherently evil. Remember that, okay? They're like fire. They can burn down a house, or they can keep you warm. And people high in these traits often radiate charisma, are extremely successful, negotiate brilliantly, and influence others. So if you scored high here, the challenge is not to suppress it. It's to learn how to aim that intensity towards something bigger than yourself. Something like your family, your community, or greater causes that you care about. So let's talk about what narcissism actually is, okay? At its core, narcissism is a personality trait that's built on vanity, self-importance, entitlement, dominance, a craving for admiration, basically the psychological equivalent of insisting on the front camera. People high in narcissism believe they deserve more than others because they see themselves as more deserving. The name comes from Narcissus, a character from Roman poetry who famously fell in love with his own reflection, which honestly is a mood, but also a warning. Narcissists are deeply invested in their own image, and they work very hard to get others to admire them and to maintain that shiny, larger-than-life version of themselves that they want the world to see. Because of that, they often come across as magnetic, charming, and confident, at least at first. The catch is their intense focus on self-image can make it very hard to form deep, genuine connections. Empathy often takes a backseat, and interest in others can feel like an afterthought. So, if your narcissism score was high, the work isn't about shame, it's just about awareness. That same fire that fuels self-adoration can also light the way for leadership, light the way for creativity, light the way for vision. It just depends on how you use it. And now we arrive at round 2, machiavellianism, the part of the Dark Triad that is less about selfies and more about strategy. If narcissism is the look-at-me energy, machiavellianism is the I already know what move you'll make 3 turns from now energy. It's the trait that's defined by manipulation, cynicism, and a by whatever means necessary approach to getting what you want. The name comes from Niccolo Machiavelli, a Renaissance political philosopher who argued that deception wasn't just acceptable for leaders, it was wise. His reasoning: people lie, politics gets messy. If you want to win, you'd better know how to play the game. People who score above 80 in Machiavellianism share a few signature traits. They're strategic, they're calculating, usually they're 2 steps ahead. They see people less as companions and more as pieces on a board. And they have a remarkable ability ability to detach from morality when it gets in the way of things. While the rest of us might agonize over whether something's right or wrong, a high Mac individual is asking a different question entirely, and that's, does it work? That's not to say every high score here is someone plotting a coup. In fact, machiavellianism traits can look like patience, diplomacy, and long-term thinking when they're used wisely. These are the people who can negotiate impossible deals, stay calm under pressure, and see the solutions that no one else does, because they're not distracted by sentimentality or social niceties. But if your score here was high, it is worth reflecting. Are you playing the game to win at all costs, or are you playing to build something that is worth winning? That question is often the difference between a master negotiator and a master manipulator. And finally, we come to round 3, psychopathy, the most intense corner of the Dark Triad and the one most closely linked to criminal activity. If narcissism is about image and machiavellianism is about strategy, psychopathy is about impulse and absence, specifically the absence of empathy, guilt, or emotional depth. It's defined by low empathy, high impulsivity, and a persistent disregard for others. People who score high in psychopathy don't just break the rules, they often struggle to even see them. Psychopathic individuals experience feelings differently, if at all, and that underdeveloped emotional landscape gives them a few notable traits: incredible stress tolerance, very little remorse, and a chilling ability to detach from the consequences of their actions. Because they're not weighed down by guilt and fear, they often seek extreme stimulation, whether that's risky sex, violent situations, dangerous drugs, or high-stakes financial gambles. That drive for intensity combined with emotional detachment fuels volatility and frequent interpersonal conflict. Not everyone who scores high here is a movie villain. While psychopathy is indeed the trait most commonly associated with criminality, it can also appear in people who are simply highly resilient under pressure or unflinching in chaotic environments. In certain contexts, like emergency medicine, special operations, or high-stakes finance, those traits are assets. So if you scored high here, the key is not to panic. It's perspective. It's always perspective. The same qualities that make you fearless can also make you reckless or destructive, but only if they're left unchecked. So, if you saw yourself in any of these Dark Triad traits, just take a deep breath. You are not a supervillain. You're also definitely not alone. If these traits were so rare, psychologists wouldn't have built entire careers studying them, and you wouldn't be here watching this. The truth is, the traits exist on a spectrum. Most of us have some traces of them, and we're not out here masterminding Ponzi schemes. What matters is what you do with the knowledge. So, here's how to turn self-awareness into something that actually helps you grow. First, get curious about whichever trait you scored high in. What triggers that pattern of behavior? How does it show up in real life? The more you understand it, the faster you'll spot it so you can pause long enough to transform it. You can do this by reflecting instead of reacting. You can ask yourself, how does this trait shape my relationships and decisions? That pause for reflection can turn unconscious habits into conscious choices, and conscious choices are where real change begins. There are also therapists who specialize in these traits, and yes, I promise you they have seen worse. Those therapists can teach you how to regulate your emotions, grow your empathy, and understand other perspectives. This is all the stuff that helps transform those me-first impulses into we-focused behavior. Also, lying is a very common thread in Dark Triad behavior, so if you find yourself lying, start challenging yourself to be open and transparent, especially when it feels awkward or uncomfortable. That's the time when it matters most. Honesty builds trust, and trust is often the bridge between manipulation and meaningful connection. And traits like competitiveness or a craving for admiration, those don't have to vanish. You can channel them into collaborative goals where you build things that serve more than just yourself. And you can pursue ambitions that lift others up alongside you. At the end of the day, the Dark Triad is not your destiny. It's just information. A map of tendencies that you can shape, redirect, and refine. Awareness is always the first step, and how you choose to use that awareness is entirely up to you. So maybe you have a little darkness in you. So what? That's human. The real story is what you do with it next. For even more psychology, personality tests, and self-discovery, make sure to subscribe to this channel. And I will see you next time.